Noah Blake had it all. A rising star in the city's police department, Noah was admired, respected, even envied. His dedication to justice was unwavering, his integrity unquestionable. That was until the night everything changed. A brutal murder rocked the city. The victim was a prominent judge, known for his controversial rulings. Fingers pointed to Noah. Whispers became accusations. He was framed, the evidence fabricated, his life shattered. The trial was a media frenzy. Noah, once the city's hero, became its villain. The jury returned a guilty verdict. His career lay in ruins, his reputation tarnished. Sentenced to prison, he endured years of confinement, clinging to the hope that one day the truth would surface. His appeals fell on deaf ears. Despair became his constant companion. After serving his sentence, Noah returned to his hometown, a shadow of his former self. The once proud detective was now a pariah, shunned by those who once hailed him as a hero. The weight of his wrongful conviction pressed down on him. He sought solace in the solitude of his family's old cabin by the lake, his only companion the ghosts of his past. Noah spent his days fishing, the rhythmic sway of the boat his only comfort. He had accepted his fate, resigned to live out his days haunted by the injustice he had suffered. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. A storm was brewing, one that would change everything. The old cabin stood on the edge of Lake Serenity, a name that mocked Noah's tumultuous life. Years of neglect had taken their toll, the wood weathered, the windows clouded with grime. Inside, dust motes danced in the pale light that filtered through the cracks. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and forgotten memories. Noah moved through the rooms like a ghost, his presence barely disturbing the silence. He found solace in the monotony of his days. Sunrise found him on the lake, casting his nets, the gentle rocking of the boat a balm to his troubled soul. The silence of the water was broken only by the cries of gulls and the occasional splash of a fish. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he would return, his catch meager but enough to sustain him. He had become a recluse, avoiding any contact with the outside world. The townsfolk, once his friends and neighbors, now regarded him with suspicion and fear. Their whispers followed him like shadows, reminders of the past he couldn't escape. He was a ghost in his own hometown, a living testament to the fragility of justice. But even in his self-imposed exile, a flicker of hope remained. Deep down, he clung to the belief that one day his name would be cleared. He held on to the memory of his former life, the life that had been stolen from him, and he waited for the chance to prove his innocence, to reclaim the honor that had been unjustly stripped away. The storm raged, echoing the turmoil in Noah's soul. Wind howled through the trees, rain lashed against the windows of the cabin. Noah sat alone, staring into the fire, its flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. The storm had been brewing for days, mirroring the unease that had settled in his gut. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. A piercing scream cut through the roar of the wind. Noah froze, his senses on high alert. He grabbed his lantern, his heart pounding in his chest. The scream came again, closer this time, filled with terror and urgency. He raced out into the storm, his lantern a beacon in the darkness. Lightning flashed, illuminating a figure struggling in the water, their cries for help swallowed by the wind. Without hesitation, Noah plunged into the icy water, fighting against the raging current. The waves crashed over him, blinding him with their fury. He reached the figure, a woman, her eyes wide with fear, her limbs flailing in panic. He grabbed her, his grip strong and sure. Battling against the relentless waves, he pulled her towards the shore. He dragged her onto the muddy bank, her body limp, her breathing shallow. He rolled her onto her back, his heart pounding with exertion and adrenaline. He recognized her then, Emma. She had been a lawyer in the city, a rising star in her own right. He had seen her picture in the papers, read about her successful career. But what was she doing here? And why was she out on the lake on a night like this? Emma coughed, sputtering water, her eyes slowly fluttering open. She looked up at Noah, her gaze unfocused, her voice a raspy whisper. You saved me." Noah nodded, covering her with his own coat, shielding her from the biting wind. "You need to get warm," he said, his voice gruff. He helped her to her feet, his arm supporting her weight. They stumbled back to the cabin, the storm still raging around them. Inside, Noah stoked the fire, the flames casting a warm glow on Emma's shivering form. He wrapped her in blankets, his mind racing with questions. As she sipped the hot tea he had prepared, she recounted the events that had led to her predicament. She had been visiting her family in a nearby town, escaping the pressures of her demanding job. A late-night walk along the lake had turned dangerous when she slipped and fell into the water. As she spoke, Noah listened intently. He recognized the determination in her voice, the same unwavering spirit he had once possessed. He learned of her work, her passion for justice, her unwavering belief in the system. He saw a kindred spirit in her, someone who understood the value of truth and the devastating consequences of its absence. "You remind me of myself," she said, her voice soft but firm. Before she trailed off, her gaze falling to her hands. Noah knew what she meant. Before his life had been ripped apart, before the world had turned against him. He saw a glimmer of hope in her eyes, a hope he had thought long extinguished. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't let her down. He had to tell her his story, to share the burden of his past. The words tumbled out of Noah, a torrent of pain and anger. He told Emma about the case, the false evidence, the betrayal that had shattered his life. He spoke of his years in prison, the despair, the loneliness, the unwavering belief in his own innocence. He described the whispers that followed him, the judgment in people's eyes, the heavy weight of the stigma he carried. Emma listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. She had read about the case, of course. Who hadn't? It had been a sensation, the downfall of a hero. But hearing Noah's side of the story, seeing the pain in his eyes, she couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt. The evidence had been circumstantial, the prosecution's case built on shaky ground. She started asking questions, probing for details, her legal mind dissecting the facts as she remembered them. Noah answered openly, honestly, his hope rekindling with each question she asked. He saw in her a glimmer of belief, a willingness to consider the possibility that he might be telling the truth. As the night wore on, a sense of purpose settled over them. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cabin a different kind of storm was brewing. A storm of hope, of determination, of a shared desire to right a wrong that had festered for far too long. Emma, driven by her unwavering belief in justice, saw in Noah's case a chance to redeem not only his life but also her own faith in the system she had dedicated her life to. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Emma, energized by a renewed sense of purpose, threw herself into Noah's case. She made calls, contacted old colleagues, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. The cabin, once a place of solitude, transformed into a makeshift war room. Files were spread across the table, notes scribbled on every available surface. Noah, initially hesitant, found himself drawn into the whirlwind. He shared his memories of the case, his insights into the players involved. His knowledge of the city's underbelly, once a tool of his trade, now proved invaluable. He had walked those streets, knew the language, understood the motives. Their investigation led them down a twisted path, uncovering long-buried secrets and shocking betrayals. They faced resistance at every turn, threats veiled and overt. The people responsible for framing Noah were powerful, their influence reaching deep into the city's institutions. But Emma and Noah refused to be intimidated. With each obstacle they overcame, their resolve grew stronger, their bond deepening. They were two souls united by a shared purpose, their lives intertwined in a fight for justice that would determine not only Noah's fate, but also the future of their own fledgling relationship. Weeks turned into months. The investigation, painstaking and relentless, began to bear fruit. Emma, with her sharp legal mind and unwavering determination, chipped away at the wall of lies that had imprisoned Noah for so long. She unearthed inconsistencies in the original investigation, uncovered tampered evidence, and exposed a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of power. The revelation of the real perpetrator sent shockwaves through the city. It was a name known to everyone, a respected figure in the community, but behind the facade of respectability lurked a criminal mind driven by greed and a lust for power. The motive, as it turned out, was as old as time itself: revenge. The news of the real killer's identity hit Noah like a physical blow. All those years he had carried the weight of a crime he didn't commit, while the real culprit walked free. Anger, raw and visceral, coursed through him. He had every right to seek revenge, to make the man who had destroyed his life pay. But as he looked at Emma, her eyes filled with a mixture of triumph and concern, he realized that revenge wouldn't bring him peace. It wouldn't erase the years he had lost or restore his tarnished reputation. True justice, he knew, lay in clearing his name and exposing the truth for the world to see. The wheels of justice, once slow and cumbersome, began to turn with surprising speed. The new evidence Emma uncovered was irrefutable, the pressure from the media and the public relentless. The case was reopened, the old verdict overturned. Noah Blake, once condemned as a criminal, was finally officially declared innocent. The courtroom erupted in cheers as the judge read the verdict. Noah, surrounded by a throng of reporters and well-wishers, felt a wave of relief wash over him. The weight that had pressed down on him for so long lifted, replaced by a profound sense of vindication. But his greatest joy came from seeing Emma's face, her eyes shining with tears of happiness and relief. She had fought for him, believed in him when no one else did. She had risked her career, her reputation, to right a wrong that had haunted him for years. In the aftermath of the trial, Noah's life slowly began to return to a semblance of normalcy. The town, once quick to condemn, now embraced him as a returning hero. Job offers poured in, his phone ringing off the hook. But he knew his life had changed forever. He had found something more valuable than fame or recognition. He had found redemption, not just in the eyes of the law, but also in the eyes of the woman he had grown to love. The sun rose over Lake Serenity, casting a golden glow on the water. Noah stood on the porch of his cabin, a steaming mug of coffee in his hand, watching Emma as she slept. The past few months had been a whirlwind, a roller coaster of emotions, but through it all their bond had only grown stronger. He had found peace, a sense of closure he had thought impossible. His name was cleared, his honor restored, but more importantly, he had found a love he thought he had lost forever. Emma, with her unwavering spirit and compassionate heart, had shown him that even in the darkest of times, hope could bloom. He watched as she stirred, her eyes slowly opening, a sleepy smile spreading across her face. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice husky with sleep. He leaned down and kissed her, the taste of coffee and promise on her lips. "Good morning," he replied, his voice filled with a happiness he hadn't felt in years. As they stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the rising sun, they knew that this was just the beginning. They had a future to build, a life to live together. The past, with all its pain and injustice, was behind them. Ahead lay the promise of a new dawn, a future filled with love, hope, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice, though sometimes elusive, could prevail.